Hello everyone, it's Old Guardian here. There's been some activities around Mercenaries in Twitter recently. Well, there's that XR stuff. Oof, you can check my other video about that. But also, the actual developers who do know what Mercenaries is about have commented on the latest balance changes, and that's really interesting because some of those balance changes I had a hard time grasping, like, okay, Dragon's Queen's Gambit, cooldown reduced, alright. Uther giving taunt at speed 1 instead of speed 3, okay, like, what are these really supposed to be doing? There were some that were really immediately useful, like the Yulon buff, and all the opportunities open up for Captain Hooktusk, but what about all the others? But now we have actual developer insight, so let's take a look at this. Tess, I championed this balance patch when I heard we had the opportunity to make one. It started with me drafting up my ideal change list and sending it to our design lead to review. After feedback I reworked it and went again, after several times, until we arrived at this version. Throughout the process I received many changes completely denied for various reasons. There were also a lot of changes that were decided would need more time to effectively implement, so they were considered a we can do this later potentially option. Okay, well, that's just software development, that's how it works. We ended up with the current list after removing the ones that fell under either criteria. I can go through the ones that did make it live and give some insight. Alex Traza, Dragon Queen's Gambit from cooldown 2 to cooldown 1. Honestly, this ability should just be 0 cooldown, but I decided to keep it at 1 because of the equipment that makes it 1 speed. Most of the time it's dealing less damage than Dragon Spread. Yeah, one speed. That would be quite a chain gun indeed. Alright. The Lich King Death Coil from cooldown 1 to cooldown 0. Pre-launch, this ability was 4 speed and had no cooldown. Wow, so that was quite a bit stronger. It seemed pretty fine in PvP that way, but it was nerfed because it was particularly strong when enemies used it in PvE. Ouch. Since then we almost doubled the amount of mercenaries released, so chance of encountering any singular mercenary in PvE is much lower. The frequency of fights against collectible mercenaries in PvE were also reduced pre-launch, but post-Death Coil nerf. Alright, that's actually interesting because, especially in the early bounties, facing collectible mercenaries in PvE is typically much more difficult than facing the native opponents. So when I go through bounties, I usually try to navigate through the native opponents and avoid the collectible mercenaries. On the other hand, in Sunken City sometimes, like, you face choice between collectible mercenaries or double gangster, and there's no way you're going to take that double gangster unless you have a comp that's specifically designed for beating that. And from this it seems obvious that Blizzard also was aware of how difficult the collectible mercenaries sometimes are in PvE. But okay, buff to Lich King because you're not going to face Lich King that often anymore in PvE anyway. Then we have Yulon Jade Flame Buffet from cooldown 1 to cooldown 0. This was made mostly to help reduce the impact of Valera. I didn't actually think it was going to be as impactful as it seemingly has been, but it's cool seeing mercs that were previously underplayed finally showing up. Well, Yulon was definitely not underplayed in PvE. Yulon was already part of the Dragon Comp and very strong part of the Dragon Comp. And now people are also starting to experiment Yulon in Fire Comp. I made a video about that, evaluating Yulon's strength in Fire Comp, but the gist of that is that Yulon is not at the level of Belinda. Yulon is not part of the optimal perfect Fire Comp, but Yulon can be a good budget substitute. So, okay, yeah, that definitely had some unexpected consequences, and it's fun to see that it's also unexpected consequences from the developer perspective. Then the Tidemister has Tissa, Wave Crush, speed 7 to speed 6, Wave Crush increases speed to activate the Frost combo on Tidal Strike. Yeah. I haven't had a chance to play with Nagas in PvE yet, but my Nagas are soon up to speed and it will be good to be able to combo more effectively. Previously, there were multiple abilities that activated this Frost combo across the Naga, but as their designs changed, those abilities were scrapped. This left the Naga with only one ability to activate the combo, so I wanted to rectify that. Okay, sweet. Riptide just felt underpowered compared to similar options, specifically Jade Gust. Jade Gust deals 40 when one character attacks, while Riptide deals 20. Riptide has pros and cons compared to Jade Gust, but not enough pros when the cooldowns seem to be justified. Yeah, Tidemister Athesa really looks like a very interesting Naga now. I really look forward to be able to play with the Nagas and use Athesa in a Naga PvE comp. I will let you know when I have tested that and what it looks like. Then that Rexxar buff, one of the more puzzling buffs. Okay, why 10 health? Why Rexxar? Rexxar has always been pretty fair, but nothing in his moveset really required him to be. If he's trying to get value of Mama Bear Claws, he needed to be alive long enough to see more beasts summoned. Right? And then Shuen the White Tiger Equalizing Strike from 7 to 5. Because Bouncy Speed 4 and generally provides plus 15 attack, Equalizing Strike is almost never going to be used. Yeah, that is true. I don't think I have ever used that ability. It would require making the ability something like 2 speed for it to be close to parity, but that seems extremely dangerous on its own. I want to increase the speed to 5 regardless to make the niche situations where you do want to use it over pounds a little bit more common. Okay, so these Rexar and Shuen changes were not really intended to change the metagame as such, but just to improve some of the mercenaries who did not feel as good as they could. Then Captain Hook does cutthroat negotiation from speed 7 to speed 2. That was really a major change. Hook is just super slow and that's hurting her overall playability, absolutely. There was a lot of fear around her when she was initially implemented because of role changing, but the many characters implemented since her can also change roles. The ability needs to be fast to both gain any utility from it and for it to provide skill testing mind games. Yeah, that's exactly how I read the Hook Task change too, and like that was one of the changes that made the most sense out of this patch, because that ability at 7 speed was just totally useless, and Hook Task was the least impressive pirate, but now that really opens up some opportunities. That's a great change overall. And then Uther Blessing of Protection from speed 3 to speed 1, there were bigger plans for Uther. Yeah, Uther is kind of useless, and Uther is still kind of useless even after this buff. But this is the only change that made it in this patch. This one was mainly a change to just tighten up the usability of the taunt. Overall, the number one thing I was aiming for was to make players have a bit more fun while playing these characters. I knew I couldn't create the perfect meta with these changes, but I pushed for doing something to make our players happier. If someone playing with Rexar loves having 10 more health, then it was worth just giving Rexar 10 more health. And then another Mercenaries developer, Tinman, also chimed in. For some mercs, we look at whether or not they are fulfilling a niche. Yulon, like you mentioned, same with Alexstrasza and Atissa in the last patch. Those mercs were not being played much, even though the things they should have been countering were fairly popular. As for more subtle buffs, we often look for teams that are good, but not quite top tier, and could use a slight bump. We will typically buff one of the weakest members of that team, Holy for instance with the Uther buff. This buff alone won't make Holy top tier, but it's a nice bonus for an older merc who has not been able to shine recently. Players can now reevaluate all Holy characters in light of a single buff. Hey, get it Holy Light, I'll see myself out. Alright, so yeah, as was to be expected, the balance changes mainly focus on the PvP side of the game and not the PvE side, even though they may have some PvE implications. And it's interesting to hear what the developers themselves think about making these changes. It's also good to hear that some of those were just made to give unpopular mercenaries a bit more of a chance, instead of every single change being something that would clearly have a meaning, a purpose in fixing the meta. Overall, it was really nice to hear some insights from people actually working on mercenaries, and these insights did confirm to me that the people who are actually working on mercenaries have some pretty clear ideas on how to develop this mode further. I just wish the progress would be a little bit faster overall. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the content, please click the like button, subscribe to my channel, and check out my Twitch channel.